Now, when we see trinomials and we're trying to factor them, and the leading coefficient is something other than 1, our process for doing it will be taking a little bit longer. There'll be a few more steps involved. Not difficult steps, but just more places to look. Let's say it that way. And one way we do that is just by trial and error. We try to narrow the list as much as we can, and then just try and check each one to see if it works. So in this one, I know that I'm going to begin with some parentheses. What's the only way my first term times my first term can make a 3x squared? The only way to do that is a 3x and an x. Then I want to look for all the ways that I can get a 28. And that's a positive one, so I have 1 and 28, negative 1, negative 28. 2 and 14, negative 2 and 14. So far that process is not too bad. We've done that before. And then I have 7 and 4. Before, then what we would do is we'd find out which pair would add up to our middle term. But this is where it's a little bit different, because our middle term is now affected by that first coefficient. Because remember FOIL, we added the outers and the inners. The outers before were just 1s, but now we have a 3 involved, so we have to take that in consideration as well. So we have to test a whole bunch of them. So let's try a +1 and a +28. That's one possibility. Let's switch those around and try a 3x and a 28 and an x plus a 1. Those are the two possibilities that account for a 3x and a 28 with those two factors. So there's two possibilities. And then let's look at, sorry, that only accounted for this top one right there. Now I need to try both possibilities with a negative 1. So that gives a 3x minus a 1 times a 3x minus a 28. I don't know if the negative 1 and 28 is in the right spot. They might have to go the other direction. So I have to try 3x minus 28 and 3x, oops, sorry, just an x minus a 1. There's those two sets. Now I have to do sets for this next pair. 3x plus a 2 and 3x plus a 14. Or sorry, x again. X plus a 14. And switch those around, so 3x plus a 14 times x plus a 2. All right, I'm halfway there. 3x minus 2 times x minus a 14. Switch those around. So it's 3x minus a 14 and an x minus a 2. Now notice, every one that I've listed so far is the ones that produce a 3x for the first term, or 3x squared, and a 28 for the last term. Now we do the 4s and the 7s. 3x plus a 4, x plus a 7, switch them around. And the last set down there is the negatives. There we have it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 possibilities to look for. Whew. Well, I guess the good news is I only have 12 to look at. The bad news is I have 12 to look at. So one of these, I'm going to get those middle terms being the 20 or negative 20. So I need to figure out how I can do that. Well, I know I'm not going to get a negative 20 when I have positive terms in each of these. So I can cross those out. I can cross out the other ones that only have positives in them. All right. We're able to reduce half of it because I recognize my middle terms have to be added up to a negative value, and the ones I crossed out would all produce a positive value. Now I need to find ones that would equal a negative 20 by adding the outers and the inners. 3 times a 28 is a 60, 70, 84 minus a 4. That's too big. This one is a 3 and a 28. That doesn't produce a negative 20. The outer term here, 3 times a 14 is 28, 30, 42. Negative 42 and a negative 2. That adds up to a negative 44. 3x times a 2 gives me a 6 and a 14. Aha. I think we have a winner right here. And let's try that out just to see if I'm not getting too tired here. Let's multiply that out and check. First times first produces a 3x squared. Outers is a negative 6x. Inners is a negative 14x. And the outers is a plus 28. Collect my like terms. 3x squared minus 20x. That's what I was looking for. Plus a 28. So there I found it. Are you wondering, do we really have to do all of that to find this one? Yeah. But this is the technique. We can't find the answer right away, but we can narrow the search down. And the more factors that the first term has and the last term has, the more places we have to look. Now this one, notice that my leading coefficient, there's a couple of different ways to make the 8x squared. So I need to count for all of those. So I know one way I can do it is an 8x and an x. Another way I can do it is, where do I want to put it here? I'll put it down here. A 4x and a 2x. Two different ways to start the problem. Now I look for all the different ways to make a negative 3. So that's 1 and a 3, and a negative 1, or positive 1 and a negative 3. Fortunately, there's only 2 ending terms to look at, so I don't have to do too much work. So one would be a negative 1 and a 3 here. And the other one would be switching those around. So 8x and a positive 3 and an x minus a 1. And then that accounts for the top one. I have an 8x plus 1 times an x minus a 3. And switch those around. I have an 8x minus a 3 and an x plus a 1. All right, you guys are able to follow that out of all the possibility where I have an 8x and an x, I had those opportunities I need to look at. So I kind of produced 4 total options. Now let's do the same thing, but where I have a 4x and a 2x as my possibilities. Again, I need to list out all the options. Eight options to look through. Those are all the options that produce the first term and the last term, but only one of these will make a negative 10x in the middle. So again, I need to think about how to think about adding the outers and the inners together to get a negative 10x. The first one produces a 24 minus a 1, that's a 23. So this middle term would be a minus 23x. That's not it. This one has a negative 8 plus a 3. That would produce a negative 5x as a middle term. This one would produce a negative 24 plus a 1. That gives me a negative 23x as a middle term. This one produces an 8 minus a 3. This is a positive 5x as my middle term. So none of those are the correct ones. Let's start this one. 4x times a 3, that gives me a 12x minus a 2. 12 minus 2 gives me, a positive 10x. So that's not it. 4x times 1, that gives me a negative 4 plus a 6. That gives me a 2x. 4x times 3 is a negative 12 plus a 2 is a negative 10x. That's what I was needing. So there's my solution right there. 4x plus 1 times 2x minus 3. Now, I hope as you do this, you start to develop a system that's consistent from one problem to the next. So it's going to take a while to develop the right pattern and the organizational structure so you don't miss one of the options. I'd hate to have you list these, but missed one of the options because of poor organizational skills, and the one you missed happened to be the solution. That'd be a bummer. And this one we're looking at, it has two variables in it, but it's still in the trinomial form. So we know that there's going to be x's in the first parentheses and y's at the end of the parentheses. So what are all the possibilities? Well, first of all, I know that it's going to be a 2x and an x. How many of those we're going to try? Well, how many factors make a 3? Oh, we know there's going to be a y in the last term too, don't we? So 3's, that's a 1 and a 3, and a negative 1 and a negative 3. So fortunately, not too many to try. Thank goodness. So 2x plus 1 and x plus 3y is one option. Switch those around, so that can be 2x plus 3y, x plus y. All right, so those are the two options for the first one. Two options on this one makes a 2x. Let me do my parenthesis first. So 2x minus y and x minus 3y. Switch those around, so it's 2x minus 3y and x minus 1y. And now we're looking for the one where the outers and the inners produce a negative 7. I can rule out 2 right away, right? Which 2 can I rule out? Looks like I can rule out the top 2 right here because all of these are positive terms and I can't add 2 positive terms to get a negative coefficient. So I reduced my workload in half. That was good. From here, my outer terms are a negative 6 plus a negative 1. That becomes the solution that I'm looking for. And I'm just going to check that because I'm pretty convinced, but it's not bad to check it once in a while too. Outer, or first times first, is a 2x squared. Good. Outers is a negative 6xy. Inners is a negative yx or negative xy. And the outers is a positive 3y squared. Add those together to like terms. 2x squared minus 6xy plus the 3y squared. Winner. Chicken dinner. Hot dog.